This conference will now be recorded.
Perfect. Your understanding and getting the technical pieces set up is appreciated. I was going to mention that this meeting will be recorded because the software does provide for that opportunity. So I just wanted to make sure that that information was out there. And this evening, our chair of the committee is actually absent due to a medical situation. And we had one other individual who was planning to attend have an unexpected family obligation. But other than that, we have full attendance. However, because of, so we are going to have Vice Chair Jack Martin lead the meeting this evening. And so Jack, can you call the meeting to order, please?
We'll call the meeting to order at this time. By the clock, it's about 6 minutes after 6. And there is an issue before the committee that before we start the agenda. Go ahead.
Oh, yes. Thank you for bringing that up. I was hoping to share that there had been several requests to allow for public testimony at tonight's meeting. And that interest came from the public as well as city leadership, and we appreciated that recommendation. As the agenda had been posted, we were hoping to bring that option up to the Springfield Police Advisory Committee for consideration, because at this point it is a committee decision on that, to potentially modify the agenda to allow that public comment opportunity. And the committee must agree by consensus to allow for that public testimony opportunity.
I'll ask the committee on that. Is there a general consensus by everyone here to add public testimony tonight to the agenda? It'll probably be towards the end of the evening.
So Jack,
what does everybody feel about that? Whether they want to listen to what the public has to say or allow the discussion, because we can set the time limit and the rules.
Jack, this is Joe. I'd like to make comment if I can. Also, I don't know if we did roll call.
Well, I don't think we've done that yet.
So we may, before we do any action, do roll call, and then after that action or roll call, then we can make comment on that. And I'd like to make comment after roll call.
Fine with me.
So Jessica would probably have to roll with that.
I'm on that. Joe Pictionary.
Here.
Barry Lind.
Here.
Michael Bean.
I'm here.
Issa Aviad is absent this evening and prearranged that. Jack Martin.
Here.
Teresa Dillon. Hi, Terry.
I was muted. Sorry, I'm here.
Thank you. Johnny Kirschenman is also absent this evening and prearranged. Jenna McCauley.
I'm here.
Hi. And Eric Adams.
Here.
Roll call complete. Thank you.
So if I could, who is Janaline McCrae? You're muted, whoever.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I'm Janaline McCrae. Please call me Jan or Mrs. McCrae.
Are you a member of the public or committee?
I'm a member of the public.
So I think if you could, I think all the committee members' cameras are on screen right now, and then everybody that is not part of the committee to go ahead and turn their camera off at this point and their microphone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have anyone from Willamette Lane?
Yeah, that was Eric Adams.
Oh, okay. Eric,
Thank you, Jessica. Thank you, Jack. So if we can go ahead and go into that discussion, I think I just give you my opinion, and everybody else obviously can jump in, is that I think it's very important that we hear from the public. I know that committees typically do not have to, but I think this is pretty exceptional times and a lot of interest in this area, and I think it's important that we hear some from our folks. But I think that we should limit, of course, typically like we would in public meetings. And my recommendation is to allow the most we can, but to limit the time to 20 minutes total. And instead of going with 3 minutes apiece, which is quite a long time, that would only allow for 6 or 7 folks. And I'm hoping that maybe we can just limit that to 2 minutes a person. That will allow for quite a few extra people, and then finish it off at the 20-minute mark. And I think we have a timer that will work. But also, I'd like to be able to hear from the public at the onset of this meeting, so that way it will give people the opportunity to leave if they wish and not have to endure an entire meeting of things that they're not necessarily interested in.
I concur. I think that's a good idea.
I'll second that.
Do we know how many people want to do comment? I see that we have.
We're getting feedback, I think, from caller 5.
Joe, I support that.
Thank you, Barry.
Committee, this is AJ, and I am an administrator in the background assisting Jessica. I am happy to assist with taking public comment if you so choose, and I do have a timer that we can do that. I would ask that all members of the public that would like to provide public comment, and I can see you starting to use the chat feature. If you'll please list your name and address for the record. That is standard in all of our public meetings. I will attempt to call you as I get that information through. Please keep in mind that with technical difficulties and delays, that it can take a little bit of time, but we will do our best to get to as many people as possible.
Thank you, AJ. So at this point, have we had a motion and approval of the public consensus option? So should we take a roll call vote of that possibility? And to understand it, the motion was for 20 minutes total at 2 minutes per individual maximum. Is that right? Okay, just wanted to recap that.
At the front end of the agenda.
At the front end of the agenda. Okay.
Yes.
So as the modification requires a consensus, I will just perform a roll call vote of that. So I'm just going to go in the same order that I took roll call of initially. And so Joe Piscineri. Yes. You can nod or please say yes, but I will be trying to find you. Mary Lind.
Yes.
Thank you. Michael Bean.
Yes.
Okay. Jack Martin.
Yes.
Thank you. Terry Dillon. I saw a head nod. I'm taking that as a yes. Jenna McCauley. Jen.
Yes. Yes, sorry.
Perfect. Thank you. And Eric Adams.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. We definitely have that consensus to add public testimony to the agenda. So thank you for that working through that for us. We did take that roll call vote. I wanted to take an opportunity in anticipation of this adjustment. We did get some guidance, and AJ provided very good information initially of how that process will likely be handled. So again, it would be 2 minutes maximum per person with 20 minutes total. AJ will be utilizing an online timer to help each individual as well as the committee be aware of how much time has elapsed. In addition, the committee will listen to your comments, but will not respond or enter into the conversation. It isn't a dialogue. We're just listening, and so they may not respond. Again, the meeting is being recorded. So it sounds like as the adjustment was made to add this to the beginning of the meeting, AJ, is this an appropriate time for you to step in?
Yes, I am happy to do so. I will ask that when you are called upon to speak, again, please list your name and address for the record. You'll want to make sure that you unmute your mic so that we can hear you. And you are welcome to use your camera if you so choose. When you start speaking, I will start the timer. If you are going over your 2 minutes, I will, as politely as possible, interrupt and advise you that you are out of time in case you are not able to see the screen or the timer. And with that, bear with me here. I'm just getting to our first. It looks like our first person asking to speak is Pam Myers. So Pam, if you can unmute your mic, and we will begin public comment.
Thank you for letting me attend today, as well as to be able to speak here. I am here on behalf of the protesters and some things that happened in Thurston. My concern is actually pretty deep. I have a background where I worked at a place called Thomson Reuters. I have worked with sheriffs, the Border Patrol, DEA, FBI, and I have to say, my daughter was one of those that was arrested in that Thurston unperceived that incident that happened. I'm concerned because of all the video that I've watched. I'm concerned as far as what happened as a result of that, the poor planning that seemed to have gone into this, but yet it was pretty evident that there was some pre-planning that did go into it. I am here attending this meeting because I want to know what's happening in Springfield and in Eugene, because there's a global thing going on. I don't know if you've noticed, but it has to do with police and defunding it. I'm not in favor of defunding the police, but I do think there's some changes that need to happen. And I'm very concerned, and I'm anxious to hear what happens today at this meeting, and that if it will be addressed, and if we're going to be able to do something that's more positive for the community and for everyone to be able to peacefully exist. So I just wanted to speak up, share a little bit about that, and I look forward to learning more about what would be moving forward. You know, mistakes like this can be made, and it can either shut you down or you can reframe things to move you into action. That's what I'm hoping happens today, that action is taken and that it moves to a better place. So I appreciate your time and thank you for that. I'll concede and let it turn over to someone else.
Thank you, Pam. Bear with me, everyone. I'm sorry, my computer gives me a little bit of a fit, so there's a moment here. It looks like our next speaker is Ryan Doppenmeyer. Ryan, if you can please unmute your mic.
Hi, my name is Ryan Doppenmeyer, and I'm a Springfield High School graduate, but currently living in Eugene, Oregon. I'm calling to express my concern about actions I have seen from the police in Springfield. I attended a Black Lives Matter protest in Springfield. And honestly, it was the first time in my life that I have ever been afraid of the police. Seeing officers out with their batons ready, they looked like they were ready for action and ready to beat people down when a peaceful protest was happening. I have participated in many other peaceful protests, Women's March, speaking out against invading Iran, and never have I encountered such attitudes by police officers. It is frankly very disturbing, especially when combined with a video that I have seen of other protests that have gone on and actions that have taken place, and what seems to be the police officers supporting white supremacist movements around town. I think that the police can be a positive influence in the community, and that is not the direction they're heading in right now. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. It looks like our next speaker is going to be Robin Mayle. Robin, please unmute your mic.
Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Hi, my name is Robin Mayle. I'm a Springfield resident, fourth generation Oregonian, and my dad was a career law enforcement officer. I have great respect for the job that our police are called to do. That being said, I feel like our police here in Springfield have betrayed our public trust. They have collaborated with white supremacists and other counter-protesters, giving them information of where they'll be blocking off protests. Peaceful protest is a constitutional right. Springfield police have allowed counter-protesters to stand behind barricades but push Black Unity protesters in front of them. They willingly gave information to a woman who boasted ahead of time that she and her friends were, and I quote, going to fuck them up, referring to members of Black Unity. Sorry for the profanity. She says on live stream she regrets not bringing her taser, and later she physically assaulted protesters. Many of these counter-protesters bring guns, bear spray, wasp spray, and air horns and use them against protesters. They have pointed guns at protesters, including me. This is illegal. I want to be clear, I'm not against the Second Amendment and against illegal use of weaponry. It is illegal. Meanwhile, the Black Unity group, which has been holding peaceful marches through Eugene, is treated completely differently by our police. They're dragged, punched, assaulted. Police stand by while counter-protesters assault us. I've marched with Black Unity many times and witnessed only peaceful methods of protest. But yet Springfield neighborhood groups are terrified of Black Unity coming to their neighborhood. Springfield police owe it to their oath to protect and serve all community members. This means dispelling fearful and hateful talk in the community. It means not collaborating with white supremacists or counter-protesters whose goal is to, quote, fuck people up. It means de-escalating tactics, not escalating. If SBD truly cares about the safety of protesters, there are many ways they could operate instead of setting up barricades and encouraging counter-protesters to sweep in behind, trapping protesters in a lose-lose scenario. I expect that this committee will provide appropriate guidance and oversight for our police and move them in a better direction to be trusted by the community again. Last thing I'll say is I read on your website, this is supposed to be a 10-person commission, and yet there's only 8 people listed on the committee for tonight's event. It appears you are missing both a cultural minority representative and a business community representative. I would urge you to fill both these positions with people from Springfield's BIPOC community. This will bring much needed balance to your goals of providing effective community input.
Robin, thank you for your comment, but your time has expired. We do appreciate your comment. Thank you so much.
Sorry, I was reading. Thank you.
I appreciate it. The next speaker is going to be Holly Schaefer. So Holly, if you can please unmute your mic.
Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
My name is Holly Schaefer. I live in Ward 2. The Springfield Police Department has a history of excessive use of force and culture issues, as evident in the Kenny settlement, numerous other lawsuits currently facing the city, and the response to protests occurring within Springfield. This has escalated to a point that the insurance company has instituted a per incident deductible of $250,000 for any police-related incidents. Through these incidents, the SPD, along with the pro-police demonstrators whose actions have been enabled and seemingly encouraged by SPD, have made it clear that anyone who, 1, doesn't share their political ideology, 2, is a member of the BIPOC community, or 3, is struggling with mental health issues, is not welcome in Springfield. How are we going to fix this? The bylaws for this committee state that you are responsible for assisting with the long-range plan by providing input, evaluation, and feedback on 3 things. 1, goals, policies, and strategies. 2, service delivery programs and priorities. And 3, progress in establishing and maintaining coordinated and cooperative working relationships between the community, school, other agencies, and the SPD. Given the fractured relationships, clear policy issues, culture problems, and discrimination against constitutionally protected classes, how do you plan to begin to repair the damage? How will this committee respond and begin to serve in the role that was intended? Thank you.
Thank you, Holly. Bear with me as I reset everyone. Thank you so much. It looks like our next speaker is Mrs. McCray, and I did get your message, Mrs. McCray. I'm sorry, I have limited ability to answer chat at the same time as running the timer, so I'm going to do everything I can to try to help you. I know you said you may need some assistance.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. That's perfect. So you are welcome to start speaking.
Thank you. I wanted to join the committee for reasons that don't involve the protest situation, although there seems to be some connection between the comments that I've heard and the experience my family has had. At the end of January, a family member of mine was spending time with a friend in Springfield. The friend got triggered by something and beat my family member seriously. It's been 6 months. He still has not recovered from his injuries. It took him a few days to get the wherewithal together to go to the police department and request a police report. When he got there, he was refused. The officer said that he was sure, based on a recorded telephone call where the perpetrator admitted in the recorded call that he had beaten my family member, that he made him bleed, that he probably looked worse than he did, that he felt there was no merit in report. I made a stink. I went to the city manager. That's what it took to get a report. It took that even after I went to the website and got information about how to follow up, how to get some information, how to get some support. To this date, 6 months later, the police department has been unwilling to investigate this, unwilling to support charges. I hired an independent investigator to do an investigation and found that not only were they unwilling to do any investigation, the one single piece that they claimed to do was falsified. That was discovered by accident, but it's fully documented. I want to know how to get this addressed and how to advocate for justice when someone gets hurt in Springfield.
Thank you for your comment. Again, the committee is not answering questions. This isn't an open dialogue. You are welcome to provide a way for us to contact you, and we were happy to follow up with you after the meeting, Mrs. McCray. It looks like, and bear with me, I'm going to reset our timer. Our next speaker is Joshua Robert. Joshua, if you're able to unmute your microphone.
Hello.
We can hear you. Thanks.
Okay, cool. I guess This concerns both me and my wife. My wife's actually a City of Springfield employee. She's the curator at the Springfield History Museum. We were at the protest in Thurston on the 29th and watched what's been described already numerous times, where the cops clearly colluded with counter-protesters who acted towards us all evening in a very, very hostile, violent, and uncomfortable manner. I was inches behind my wife, who was sprayed directly in the eyes, maybe 3 inches from her face, with wasp spray. An officer 20 feet away, after my wife was blinded by wasp spray, refused to help us as he stood in the middle of the road holding his nightstick, being Mr. Tough Guy. Since then, I've heard numerous things from the Springfield police themselves, none of which mention apprehending or following up on any of these neo-Nazi, all-American, super patriot counter-protesters. Yet I continue to see arrest after arrest of peaceful protesters. And I understand the riot and looting people that have been arrested today and yesterday. I get that. None of that happened in Thurston. None of that happened at all. And I know the police are aware of that, and they're aware of the videos of them colluding with the counter protesters and everything else. And you guys really need to do one of these again where it's an open dialogue, because it's so unfair that you guys are not answering the questions of the massive amount of your community that was affected that night, and how clearly law enforcement stood on the side of vigilante criminals that were carrying nightsticks, wasp spray, throwing bottles, etc. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm resetting the timer here really fast. It looks like, and I'm sorry if I mispronounce anyone's name. Our next speaker is Shay Halliger Starr. If you can unmute your mic.
Sure. Okay. Shay Gallagher Starr, that's correct. Thank you for allowing me to speak this evening. I am in Ward 6. I live in the neighborhood in which the protest occurred on the 29th. I also participated in the protest. And I want to be clear that our community members in protesting, we used words. There was no trespassing. There was no vandalism. We were unarmed. And yet, echoing the comments of a previous commenter, yeah, for the first time in my life, I was actually afraid of our police department myself when our protest met the Springfield Police Department barricade. And not simply because the officers had clearly come prepared for violence and prepared to begin violence. In fact, they rushed their own barricade. But they had come apparently to collude with white supremacist counter-protesters who were being allowed behind their barrier. They were being allowed around the sides of the barrier, where as protesters came toward the barrier, they began throwing things, spraying things, yelling. I'm also concerned about not just the lack of control of these, many of them armed white supremacists at the point of meeting, but also the lack of safety that was demonstrated as the protesters did disperse and return to their cars, most of which were up around Jessie Main Park. That community was provided with no protection. And they were completely left to the mercy of armed white supremacist thugs who were shouting epithets, who were making threats.
Shay,
yes.
Shay, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
You are out of time.
Thank you. I wasn't able to see the timer. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. I understand completely. Thank you so much. So it looks like our next speaker is Jessie Preston. Jessie, if you are able to unmute your mic.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Hi, my name is Jessie Preston. I live on F Street out in the Thurston area. I'm calling because though I share the same concern as most of the other people have voiced, I want to offer something for you guys to consider, an action that might help. I have worked with adults with developmental disabilities for many years. I have had to go through training called Organ Intervention System, and it basically teaches you how to interact with people who are oftentimes much larger than you in crisis situations where you avoid yourself getting hurt and you avoid hurting them while also de-escalating the situation. It seems odd to me that I, as a 120-pound woman, have successfully de-escalated extremely violent situations with men that were 3 times my size, and yet police officers armed with weapons of violence have to resort to using those weapons of violence to not de-escalate, but further escalate situations. So why is it that in all the money we spend on our police department, proper training for proper de-escalation is not a part of their training, at least not to the point where it would be evident to the community that they are interacting with? That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessie. At this time, we have enough time for one more speaker. That will be Thomas Lawrence. I have 2 other people that have requested a moment to speak. So Thomas, I will not take any more of your time. If you can unmute your mic, and once we get through that, then I will pose a question to the committee.
Awesome, thank you so much. I hope that question is, do we need more time? Because obviously this is a pretty big issue. I also want to just kind of reiterate the same stuff that we have heard from pretty much everybody. This is obviously the biggest thing going on in our city and country right now. But I also want to add an action step besides just pointing all this out. All of this was on video. This was the officers' reactions and actions while they knew they were being videotaped. So just imagine how much this happens when they're not. Earlier this month, the protesters first started making sure that we added the body cams in there because they were trying to take them away. And it's pretty obvious there's a reason for that. Again, this was their actions when they knew they were being watched. They knew that people were streaming them on the counter protest side, Facebook living it, and they don't care. They all make it clear which side they're on. Officers gave directions, coordinated. One officer told some people on the protest side that they cannot be behind the barricade, and they told them explicitly they can't do that because they're hating on the cops, but the other people can. The action step here that I would like to point out would also be some of that mental health training, like previously mentioned. Cops don't need to be heading to a lot of those things, and that definitely adds strain to their job. But the other part is just that this needs to be taken seriously because it's on video and we all see it. And that was, what, 2 weeks ago, and we're just now getting around to being able to talk about this. It shouldn't take this long. This, again, I can't say this enough. This is on video. Everybody can see exactly what happened and how it happened and why it happened. And yet the narrative is that we're all still not able to make a difference or make a change. We have to be able to address this faster. It would be awesome if there is a system set up to where we can actually put this information in quicker and get it addressed faster, because this stuff moves in real time, and there have been countless bad situations that have happened since then, and those officers are still on the streets, and they shouldn't be, at least until the review's over. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Thomas. So again, committee, this is AJ, and we have provided 20 minutes for comment. I do have 2 speakers that were left in line to speak. So I would like to leave it to you for a consensus in regards to, would you like to allow the additional 4 minutes for the last 2 speakers?
Yes.
I would have no problem with adding those 2, but just those 2, please.
Yes.
I say let them talk.
I agree with just the 2.
Okay. So the two that we have left this evening is going to be Ellen Clouden and Marion Sendhill. So Ellen, if you would like to unmute your mic and please limit your comments to no more than 2 minutes. Oh, and Ellen, are you, bear with me, I'm trying to get to your microphone here and see if I can help you. Ellen, do you want to try to
I'm here. I don't know if you can, I don't know if you can hear me, but I'm here.
Yep, I can hear you. So we're going to start the clock.
Okay. Wait, is it my turn? I'm going?
Yes. Yes.
Go for it, lady.
You have 2 minutes to speak.
Am I, is it Ellen talking or is it Mary?
It's Ellen speaking.
Marianne
Someone
talking.
said me. You showed me as unmuted, which I didn't unmute myself.
Hello. Oh, it is? Okay, just tell me when to start.
You are ready to start, Ellen.
Should I start?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes, please begin.
Okay. I live in Eugene, but I worked in Thurston for 3 years at an assisted living.
Ellen, I'm sorry, we may have a bad connection because you have cut out. Ellen, are you there? Okay, so it appears that we are having a technical difficulty with Ellen. If you can still hear me, Ellen, we are more than happy to take your comment in writing. I will provide my email address at the end of this meeting in the chat, or before the end of this meeting in the chat. So you are welcome to provide your public comment in writing. We definitely want you to be able to have that opportunity, but we also need to make sure and respect other people's time. So our next speaker is going to be Marion Sendhill. Marion, are you able to unmute? Are you?
This is Marion.
This is Ellen, and I've been trying to talk, but it kept telling me that you were. It said AJ Ripka was presenting, and it said it didn't change my timer, so it looked like I wasn't talking. I don't know if you heard me at all.
You started your comment and then it cut out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure and provide in the chat my email address. We're going to ask that you provide your comment in writing, and we're happy to give it to the committee, but we do need to move along. And I understand it's frustrating with the technical difficulty, but we're going to go ahead and move on to Marianne's comment.
Did you hear anything I said at all?
Your phone is very blurred, so I'm going to ask you to go ahead and mute so that Marianne can start her comment.
Would you please advise Ellen to use the phone number to call in instead?
I'm sorry?
Please advise Ellen that she can call the phone number instead.
Yes, Jen, I appreciate your comment. She is welcome to send in writing. Again, we are out of time. We have already extended this time once. So I'm going to ask that everyone mute their mics with the exception of Marianne so she can please provide her comment. Thank you. Marianne, you're welcome to provide your comment. Thank you.
Thanks. Hello, my name is Marion Sendhill. I'm a former Springfield resident. I currently live in Eugene. I have already sent written comments, and I just didn't want to add another comment on the pile. I agree with all of the comments that have already been said. What I would like to have the committee think about is that the response from authority has been little to none, and the world is watching. There are citizen journalists who are live streaming all of these events, and people internationally are looking at your response. And it's important. What you're doing is important. This is important work. So please, I'm asking that this situation that is building is taken seriously, because I feel as if the authority, the city councilors and the city manager, I haven't heard from them. I haven't seen a public statement, sending out a message that says, hey, we heard you. Hey, the police is supposed to be impartial and this is being dealt with. Now, my suggestion is that immediately there is more training for the police, more diversity training, more bias training, more ethics training, more communication training, because I don't think they're getting enough, because they are not showing that their training is working. Now, I agree with allocating some of their funds to other agencies. However, in the short term, something has to be done and not a wall of silence. Thanks.
Thank you so much. So that is our last speaker. I can see, Ellen, thank you so much. I can see your comment in the chat box. So we do appreciate that. We are going to move on at this point in the meeting, and we are no longer accepting public comment. I will provide you with an email address in the chat box that you are welcome to send public comment if you would choose to do so. And Jessica, I will turn this over to you.
Thank you so much, AJ.
Thank you all for your comments this evening. We'll see what we can do about clarifying some of these problems in the future.
Okay. So
we're going on the agenda now?
we're going to return to the agenda order as it was prior to adding public comment. And so, Jack, I think if you'll take us to number 2 on the agenda, that would be great.
Let's see. Can we have the meetings of the February minutes approved? Have they all been read?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second that emotion.
All those in favor?
Motion. That emotion too.
Okay. So can we get, is it beneficial to take a roll call on this, or can we just do a consensus aye and ask for nays?
Perhaps
So,
a show of hands.
Hands up if you approve. Excellent. See that, Jack? If you vote, all right. Anyone oppose? Excellent. Okay. So the minutes for February 12th, 2020 were approved. Thank you.
Now it's time for updates from Chief Lewis.
Oh, you're muted, Chief.
I think I know better by now. Yeah, there we go. Okay. Hey, good evening, everybody. I realize it's been a number of months since we've seen each other, and this is a little bit unusual format here for me. So I hope I'm not sitting too close to the screen or doing anything like that. I'm going to go through this in a somewhat of an expedited manner until we get to down to the lower parts of the agenda there. So if you have questions, please make sure you stop me and wave your hand or something like that. So this is a little bit more difficult. I put my glasses on so I can see this. Everybody's in such a tiny screen on this thing. So the first thing on the agenda is committee resignation, and most of you know, I'm assuming that Robert resigned. Robert moved out of the city of Springfield. He resigned in June, so that's the reason for his leaving the committee. So we want to thank him for his service and his time with the committee. We'll, when we get down to agenda item number 8, we will kind of discuss filling those positions. And so I'm just going to kind of bypass that for now for a little bit. So the second part, if it's okay with you, Jessica and Jack, I'm just going to kind of jump through the ones on here since I'm supposed to be responsible for most of these. So if we go to the next item on there, the typical thing is where I talk about the accommodations and the complaints. And obviously we've been gone for a number of months, and so I'm just going to hit a few of the months. We've had a transition of the personnel that has done this reports for me. So I don't have the July one and the June one, but I'll hit the March, April, and May since we missed those. Then the next meeting we'll bring those up, and I'll kind of go through these fairly quickly. So in the month of March, we had 2 accommodations. The citizen advised they're very thankful for the call taker for going above and beyond the call of duty, helping her with the situation. We had another accommodation where the caller really appreciated a particular officer and said he was very kind and helped him back to his hotel when he was lost. So took time to call in and express his thanks and gratitude. We did have 2 allegations of misconduct in the month of March there. The allegation was against employees of the jail. They were allegation advised that the person making the allegation advised that they were threatened and assaulted by officers. This was investigated by a supervisor and adjudicated by a lieutenant in this case, and it was not sustained. And then the second allegation was a complaint against an officer for the use of force and arrest of a juvenile. That again was investigated by a sergeant and adjudicated by the lieutenant, and it was unfounded at that time. And then, as you'll remember, when we go through these, we talk about it, the number of uses of force in that particular month. And if you remember, since you don't have it probably in front of you there, I don't have, is a use of force, and I'll kind of hit the highlights of them. But so we had 343 total arrests for that particular month in March. And of those arrests, only 30 times was there any level of force used. And if you remember right, a level of force can be anything from just the display of a firearm. It can be simply, could be a canine. It could be physical, which could be anything from, you know, an escort hold, pinning someone against the wall, to an actual strike. And then if the taser is pulled out, and even the threatened use of a taser is something we count along those. So out of 343 arrests, again, there was only 30 uses of force in this particular month. It was there was 4 times we had firearms displayed, 2 times involved the canine, 22 times involved physical, 1 time involved the taser. And so that takes care of March. In April, we had no accommodations. We had 1 allegation of misconduct. The allegation was the officer used profanity, excessive force, and was discourteous. The case was investigated by a sergeant, again adjudicated by a lieutenant. The part of the complaint was sustained. That part was discourteous. That was sustained, and the officer received an oral reprimand for that particular situation. What was found not sustained was the excessive use of force and the profanity. In this particular case, I do remember that there was a video present, and there definitely was no profanity in that particular case. And I forgot to comment about the use of force in jail from the prior month. I'm sorry, I talked about patrol. And the use of force in, I'm going to go back, sorry about this. Back in March, we had 156 bookings. There was only one time there was any physical force used in the jail. So jumping back to April, we had 256 total arrests for the month. 21 of those required some type of use of force. Again, that was 14 physical, 3 a firearm was displayed, 2 times a taser was displayed, 1 time for a canine, and 1 less lethal. And then for the jail in April, we had 88 jail bookings and no uses of force. If you'll notice, if you remember, sometimes we've had comments about this, and we have a lot more jail bookings in the past, but with COVID, the situation, we've tried to limit our numbers in the jail, trying to keep people separated. So that's probably why you see the numbers in the jail down fairly significantly. And then May, we had a complaint regarding one of our call takers was unhelpful and poor customer service. That was investigated by a supervisor, again adjudicated by a lieutenant in this case, and the complaint was sustained and the individual received a written reprimand. Any questions on those issues right there?
No.
Seeing none. Okay. Just wanted a little heads up, since again it's been since February that we've met. We have had a promotional process since that time. We've promoted 2 lieutenants. Both of the individuals have been here with a number of years. They actually both started their career at the Lane County Sheriff's Office, worked there in the jail for a number of years, and then they came to us and been with us for over 20 years. And both long-term, dedicated individuals who will make great promotions for us, very committed to this community, and very, have really done an excellent job. And each one of them is very well-rounded. They've done a lot of different things within the department, so we're pretty excited to have them. That's Lieutenant George Crawley and Lieutenant Matt Nyworth. And then we had, with those promotions, then there's openings for the sergeants, and we've had 3 sergeant promotions. We've also had a retirement. That's why the discrepancy there in the numbers. And so we promoted 3 officers, again, very dedicated individuals with a lot of experience to the position of sergeant, brings in some real, fresh ideas and new blood to the situation. So pretty excited about that. So I just wanted to kind of bring you up to date regarding that right there. Any questions regarding that before I move on? All right, so if we go to the key policy updates, typically what we do, as you guys know, is we send you guys the, oh yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I just had an afterthought on the promotions here, lieutenant promotions, and where were there, who were they and what assignments did they get?
Oh, so Matt Nyworth is one of our new lieutenants, and he's currently assigned in our jail, in charge of the municipal jail. And Lieutenant George Crawley has been assigned to our patrol division. And
thank you.
Again, yes. So moving on to the talk about the use of force policy. I mean, typically when we do policy, we send that out to you guys, ask for your input, and we are going to do that with these 2 particular policies. But we made some changes based upon the new laws that have gone into effect recently regarding police reform. And I'm going to talk about each one of these just a little bit, hit the highlights of them. And then right now they're in the process of going back and forth between us and the attorneys to finalize them. But be assured that the new laws and these policies and the changes we made have already been implemented. The officers know that they exist and they are operating under those guidelines. So under the use of force policy, we had to make several changes in this. One of them is to comply with House Bill 4203, and that talks about the lateral vascular neck restraint, or also known as the chokehold. Based upon that particular House bill, that is no longer an option for the officers except in a deadly force situation. And so that has been communicated to our officers, and that will be a change in our use of force policy that we have. So we'll be making that change. Also in that particular policy, we'll spell out the de-escalation techniques, and that will be a new addition. There's some minor changes in there. When we send that to you, we'll document what those changes are and how that works. The second policy there that we needed to change is because of House Bill 4205, and that talks about the duty to intervene. I don't know if you guys have caught this on the media, but it's kind of a response from the George Floyd incident where you had other officers seemingly not intervening or taking action against the individual with his knee on Mr. Floyd's neck. And so I think this particular House bill we've added to our policy, and again, we've already made our officers aware of it. And we added that to our 26.1.1 as our code of conduct policy. And so that has been taken care of. And
what?
Yeah. Did somebody have a question? Okay. So I think that's all I have on the policies before we move on. Anybody questions about that? Okay, thank you. Moving on to the budget update, just to let you know again, since it's been a while since we met.
Raising my hand, I had a question. When do we receive a copy of the written updated policies for our review? Next week, this week?
Depends on how fast the lawyers are, I guess. So I would anticipate maybe a couple weeks. Yeah. So it's probably be at least a couple weeks at this point, I think. Just want to make you aware of it. So moving on to the budget issue, just want to let you know that the budget passed. Kind of the big change, as most people know, is the body cameras are in part of that budget, and Jessica and many others are working very hard on that program to get that up and going with a target date of the officers will actually have them ready to go probably by the 1st of February of 2021. And other than that, the budget is pretty much as presented. So Jessica, did I miss anything, or anybody got questions regarding that? Yes.
So just, I mean, there's a lot of misinformation out there, and many folks felt or thought they knew that the police had video cameras on them already and that they were being taken away, which is absolutely not the case. It was a case of the cameras being funded for the first time to be able to have the program for the first time. So there's a big miscommunication there. I just want to make sure people knew that. I think there's a lot of feedback coming back, Mike.
The feedback on mine?
Michael's, I think. Michael Beans.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Want me to mute?
Oh, that's better. Thanks.
Michael, did you have something you wanted to add?
Well, I just wanted, we have a large audience, which is not typical, but we've always advocated on this committee for body cameras. I just, if you're going to clarify, as a member of the council, Joe, I just thought I'd clarify our position.
Yes,
I'm gonna go ahead and jump in on that. And you could actually, I totally know that, Michael. And you can ask the chief how many times, we've been working on this in council and work sessions, and how much of a kind of a loudmouth I've been about it. So go ahead and ask him, and the chief will have to tell you.
Yeah, this has been a kind of long, ongoing issue, and good to be moving down the road with it right now. Just so you know, you may see some officers out there right now with body cameras, and we are in the process of testing them. So it's not everybody, but some of the officers who are part of the testing program will be wearing body cameras. So it won't be totally unusual if you do see a Springfield police officer with a body camera over the next several months as we do testing. So any other questions? Jessica, do you want to add anything on the budget at all?
Not unless there's any particular questions, but I'm happy to answer if there is.
Okay. So I'm going to move on. I'm sorry, go, Michael.
I don't know if you see me right. Is Cahoots in the budget this year for Springfield?
Yes. Correct. If you guys will remember, we talked about Cahoots is, right now, some of that is per a grant fund and some of it is paid for by the city. And that cost to the city is stabilized this year, but I think the following year it could go up a substantial amount of money as the grant ebbs and flows. And so we're going to be watching that real carefully. So now I guess if you're ready, we'll move into talk about the demonstrations we've had. And when I say demonstration response on the agenda, I want to be real clear that I'm talking about the demonstrations we've had since the start of the Black Lives Matter movement. I just kind of give you guys some context about what's going on. And I know that many people spoke tonight, and we appreciate the comments and concerns they brought up. And I'm not here to be argumentative with any of them. I very much take them to heart, and we'll listen to them and take that into consideration. I just want this particular group of people, you as the task force, to kind of know where we've been with all the protests and kind of where we think we're going to end up and going on that. And so I'm going to be fairly quick about this. It's going to be, some of it I'm going to be a little bit simplistic on, so I don't apologize to people. And I know that the task force probably didn't have the opportunity to actually be out there like some of the callers who were actually present. And so I'll try to paint a little bit of a picture of what happened. But again, remember, just for everybody's sake, it's just a simplistic view and not meant to be a detailed analysis of everything that happened out there. So we've roughly had about 8 demonstrations before last Wednesday's incident. And of those 8 demonstrations, I'm going to simplify this into, you have the Black Lives Matter movement, or Black Unity. I'll refer to that group, and it's probably not fair to do that, but basically as the Black Lives Matter group. And then you have what I guess for lack of a better word, and I really don't have a term for it, but the All Lives Matter group, which some people refer to as the Patriot group or whatever it may be. So when I'm talking, I'm going to try to stick to those 2 acronyms just for clarity. It's probably not a fair representation of either one, but that's kind of where we're at with this.
Why has
somebody have a question? I didn't catch that. Okay, so since the start of this, our overall goal for these events has been the safety and security of our residents.
Has been turned off?
Is that Jack talking?
Why is chat turned off?
There we go. I think we're ready to go now. Okay. So I think that I would start back over here. So our overall goal for these things has been the safety and security for Springfield residents, the businesses, and the demonstrators themselves. And we truly understand and respect people's right to protest. We have allowed all these marches in Springfield. The only time we have ever had some kind of encounter is the simple fact that we want to keep them off Main Street, where it's 5 lanes. Main Street has a very storied history out there for having fatal accidents on it. And it's something that we're very concerned about. As you notice across the country, we've unfortunately had some demonstrators been hit, specifically the one in Seattle. We had one over here in Eugene recently that there's been some news about, it was recently in the news. And so those things are a concern for us. And so again, we've had these demonstrations. We have allowed the people to walk wherever they want, with the exception of Main Street. I think it's really a simplistic ask, just to stay off a few miles of Main Street and they've been allowed to go wherever else they want in Springfield at this time. And so that's kind of the way we started these demonstrations. We haven't had to have much police interaction, as I mentioned earlier. And the only times we've gone over there is we've had a couple of arrests. Early on, we had an arrest of an individual who refused, after we had trouble between the 2 groups, we trying to get people out of the street. They were ordered out of the street. 99.9% of the people got up and got out of the street in this particular case. One individual didn't, got in the street multiple times, was finally arrested. That individual, I don't think really was a demonstrator, protester for either side. He was an individual we have arrested over the years multiple times in the downtown community. We had one other arrest during some of these protest demonstrations with a female who got into a shoving match and pushed another person, and that individual was arrested. And then I think there's, we had one other altercation where they had what y'all call the All Lives Matter group was having a rally at the library, and an individual came in. Maybe you saw this or on there playing or pretending to play an accordion and was running into people and shoving people, and there became an altercation. Our officers went in there and separated everybody. That individual had a warrant for their arrest and was removed. And so those are the initial arrests that we've had in the demonstration before Wednesday night, the demonstrations. That really was all that we have had in there. We have gone in, had to go in a number of times with officers and separate the groups, both sides of this issue. So our officers have to go in there, and this mostly happened downtown when people were at the library and court, or the courthouse outside of City Hall there. So we've gone down there and had to do that occasionally. It's not a good spot to put our officers in. They're trying to keep both sides separated from each other. And it's like always, each side, there's some individuals who are agitators who are willing to be more aggressive than others. And those are the individuals that we have to pay attention to and deal with. As I mentioned before, we have stopped the group in the past. We stopped them at one time. The first time I think they went out to Thurston, we stopped them at 69th and C because they were headed towards Main Street. And then we stopped them at about roughly 17th and Main one particular night as they were headed up to Main Street, up to where it becomes 5 lanes. And again, that's only the reason we stopped them, is to keep them from going up to the 5 lanes. And in that particular case, I don't know if you'll remember, we had quite a long standoff. Our officers were basically in a line, and the protesters were within just a foot or two of them, and there was quite the conversation and not a pleasant conversation, to say the least, going on for the whole time there. And so I bring this up only to talk about why the barricades were used. I'll get to that in a moment. But in that particular situation, we were very patient. We just wanted simply, don't go to Main Street. The members or leaders from the particular event that night ended up meeting with some of our command officers, and that's when the agreement was done. Look, the protesters would back away from our officers, turn around, take a knee if our officers took off our helmets. And so we were in agreement to do that, and that was done and completed. And so I thought that went pretty well. One particular one of these protests or demonstration, however you want to phrase it, both sides showed up over down at City Hall, and they actually shared the mic. And I thought that was a pretty unique experience. They may not have agreed with each other, but they shared the mic for some period of time, going back and forth. And I thought that pretty much worked out. And so what of our involvement has been, for the most part, in all of these marches is for us to provide the safety and security for people involved. And so we provide our traffic control in front. We move ahead of the march just so we can make sure that traffic is stopped and you don't have these stray cars driving into people who are actually on the street and moving down the street. So that's pretty important for us to do, and we've done that for quite a while. So I'm going to fast forward here to Wednesday night. Again, that's a simplistic overview of what took place over the last month or so. So Wednesday night, this kind of started, and I'll give you a little bit of a history and just kind of a real high-level view of how this all came about. There's an individual who lives out of Bluebell Way who had a skeleton, a white skeleton with a noose around his neck, hanging in his yard, and he also had several other Halloween decorations. And this skeleton caused some concern for an individual in the neighborhood, and this information got posted on social media, and there started to be talk among the Black Unity group and others about we should go over there to Thurston, and have basically have a march over there because of this situation. And then there's some back and forth from I believe it's maybe someone that knows this individual. And again, I haven't read all these. I'm getting this kind of secondhand. So there's back and forth on social media that, hey, this individual has had these Halloween decorations up for 4+ years. There's nothing racial about it. We actually sent one of our officers out there to kind of take a report and find out what's going on exactly. When the individual was contacted, he was in agreement to take it down. And then we started to see a little bit of chatter on social media that, hey, maybe this is just Halloween decorations and not really a reason to go out there. But at the same time that was going on, we had some individuals basically telling the Black Lives Matter movement, don't come out here. And I think there was some back and forth started. Anyway, the decision at some point was made to have the march out there. And so that happened on Wednesday night, and it was planned for 7 o'clock to start in Jessie Preston. And so I probably should address a little bit of what's brought up about the perception that the officers are in cahoots or sympathetic, or however you want to word it, with the other side.
Yes, they are. Indeed, they are. They are indeed.
So, sir, I'd just be respectful if I could just finish without you interrupting. That'd be great.
You're lying.
Okay. So anyway, we've been pretty consistent on making sure our officers, don't give that impression to anybody. Our job is to be neutral in these situations, and that's what we're supposed to do. That's what police are supposed to do. We don't take part in the demonstrations, one side or the other. We don't participate in the demonstrations. So we have the situation happens out there. It starts, and then people are very, I'm going to, be really blunt about this. People are very concerned in the neighborhood. We're getting a lot of comments to us as we're up there, like, why are we letting this happen in this particular neighborhood? And people are very concerned. There is about 60 to 70 people near the residence on Bluebell Way, and many of those people are armed. Not all of them, but many of them are armed. And so that's definitely a concern for us to keep the two sides separate from each other. And so the march starts, obviously it doesn't start right at 7, but it gets started at 7:30. And it takes off and basically goes west on Fort Cynthia up there and then through the neighborhoods in there. We've made the decision that night that there was only 2 places we weren't going to let them go. Again, the Main Street was the safety for Main Street. And that's really, to me, that's a very simplistic ask. And then we weren't going to let them go on Bluebell because I just didn't want that intermix with the 2 groups. That was too volatile a situation to allow. And we were responsible for everybody's safety. And so that was not going to happen. The reason the barricades were used, I'm kind of skipping forward here just a little bit. The reason the barricades were used was we simply thought with the use of the barricades, you give a visual place where people realize I'm not supposed to cross the barricades. And that way our officers don't have to stand right in the middle of the street and then stand toe to toe with people who are yelling and screaming in their face. And so we have the barricades, and then back behind the barricades is the police cars, and then back behind that is our officers. And that's the way we set this up on South 67th Street. And in this particular case, we were there for a while. They got there. This goes on from the time we have first contact for roughly about 15 or 18 minutes from the time we have first contact.
Function back on. Turn the chat function back on.
So there's
Chief Lewis, may I interrupt momentarily? Sure. Thank you so much. This is AJ, and I am going to ask that everyone continue to mute their mics. This is a public meeting, but we are not accepting public comment. If you disrupt this meeting, you will be dismissed from this meeting. So we do appreciate your cooperation. We do encourage you to attend, but we do ask that you not disrupt this meeting. Thank you.
Please turn the chat function on.
Okay. So let me kind of back up here again. So there's been video that you've probably seen on the social media and that different things. We have video from where the police are in this particular case. And there is, and I'm going to, again, this is an ongoing active case. And so I'm going to be cautious about how much detail I get into because that's not appropriate. Because I want everybody to know that there will be additional arrests forthcoming, not only on the Black Lives Matter side, but also on the All Lives Matter side. And they are people we've identified, and through video and through other analysis, there'll be additional arrests coming. So the barricades eventually, at some point, they start to get pushed back towards our car, and they keep, they're quite a space away from our car. They get pushed back in our car. People are given admonishments, multiple admonishments. Don't cross the barricade, don't push the barricades. They end up basically in our car. Our officers now have to move up to keep people from moving out of this. There is video that we've obtained out there that clearly demonstrates that one individual who was arrested, again, I'm not going to get into the specifics of who or what, that is clearly telling the crowd that prior to this, that if you don't want to be part of this, we're going to push through the line and you can leave now. And so that individual is eventually ends up being arrested because they try to push through the line and are told multiple times not to. We don't want these confrontations. That's not what we're there for. We simply want them to stay off Main Street. The officers are wearing helmets, and they have their batons, and that's because we've had to get between two groups several times. Not just this particular night, but other times, as I mentioned earlier, that we had to separate the two sides, excuse me. And so there was the arrest made at that time, and then there was, the group went back to their cars. One of the callers did describe that they were blocking their way. Our officer did go up there and remove the people, or not remove, but made sure that was opened up. We're not in collusion with the other side. The other side did come up behind our lines. That's true. That's the only reason for the barricade was to keep people off of Main Street. And so I want to be really clear about that. We don't need anybody's help when it comes to this stuff. It makes it very difficult for us. We have to utilize resources to keep people from coming up behind us. We don't know who is who. It makes it really difficult for us to manage that situation. Also, there are times when people are, we take away resources, or they're coming up behind us and they're slow on response from our other officers down to get there. So as people are leaving, there is some other altercations. We do have police reports about those other altercations. And again, I talked about this, but there will be some additional arrests forthcoming from that. There was another altercation down near Bluebell where a All Lives Matter person, and that's not fair to say that. I don't know if this individual is associated with them or not, but I just use it just to tell this, how this incident unfolded. That individual ended up pushing one of the protesters down. The protester hit their head on the street and were injured, and we did make an arrest on that particular individual.
Your officers told her where to go.
So anyway, so that eventually things get calmed down.
Everyone, remember they turn the chat back on.
All right. I'm going to ask everybody very nicely not to interrupt anymore. We're just going to have to turn it off. So thank you.
Please turn the chat function back on.
All right. So after that occurred, things got kind of settled down enough. We ended up back down. We had a few people. We had arrested 5 people initially, and then counting the one other person, that was 6. And then at the station, we had some people come down to make let me back up again. We'll go back to the incident when our officers and the struggle there. Our officer was that ended up on the ground in this situation was bitten on the hand, was punched by other people. One of our officers.
One of your officers punched a woman in the face.
One of our officers took a Gatorade bottle to the head, and so those situations happen. Again, we'll be looking into those further on. And so anyway, we ended up back down at the station. A couple hours go by. There's some people down there to bail some of the individuals out. After they get the people bailed out, they decide to put some graffiti on the windows of the police near the jail. Those 2 individuals were later arrested also. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. I think you know, I just want to kind of leave it open from the committee members if you have any particular questions about that. You know, this is a difficult situation. We're trying to be neutral and make sure that all sides, and again, as I mentioned, there was one particular time that both sides got to share the mic, and I thought that was great. There were no issues. The very next night after this happened in Thurston, there was another march that was, the information was communicated to us that there was going to be no problems, and it was communicated to us of where they were going to march. And that took place. Took place with zero police involvement, except for our cars moving ahead of the marchers to be able to deal with that, the traffic part of that, which is what we're there for. And I just want to commend the organizers.
Can you explain why your officers punched people in?
So anyway, that's kind of it in a nutshell for the task force. I'll be happy to answer some questions if you have some.
I've got a question. The mayor said that she had hired an agency to do an outside investigation. Was an agency hired to do that?
Well, the mayor has instructed the city manager to do that, to hire an outside expert on the use of force. And that hasn't happened yet, but that is the plan in place. That's correct.
Is there a timeline for that, or?
Well, you know, by the time the investigation is done and by the time you get that to somebody, we are estimating that could take a couple of months. So just so you know, we do an internal investigation through our professional standards, sergeant and others. They'll do they'll go through and we'll interview the officers there. They'll interview people they need to, read police reports, gather all the video evidence we can. And as you can imagine, there's a ton of video evidence in this particular case. And we will take that, and that will be given to this outside individual, and they will make a determination.
But they haven't been hired or contracted with yet, so?
No, that has not happened yet. Okay. Any other questions from committee members?
I had another question. Do you communicate that with like BLM or Black Unity, that you're going to be closing off the street so they have a heads up, so there are no surprises? Is there a way to communicate to the Springfield Police Department and scheduled protests or impromptu protests?
Well, again, we have communicated that in the past. The only street we've ever closed off and told them they couldn't go down is Main Street, and that's happened early on, and we've talked about that both publicly and with when we were out there at 17th and Main. It was clearly communicated.
Way to avoid the question.
Wait, you're welcome to go basically anywhere there is. Just please stay off Main Street in these particular areas. And so it really is a simplistic ask, I think. I don't think it's asking too much. There's a couple 100 miles of streets in Springfield, and Main Street's just one of those ones we don't want to see anybody get hurt out there. Any other questions from the group? You know, I know I went through this really fast. We're getting close on our time, and I want to be respectful of every time. There's a lot to this. There's a lot more than just what I talked about there. The concerns, we do take people's comments and concerns very seriously. You know, we worked hard to have
chat function back on.
We worked very hard to have a great relationship with the community, and we will
How many times will you say simplistic?
So if there's any other questions on that, should we move on to number 8 there?
Chief Lewis, I'd just say that obviously there's some folks really upset, and as a committee, we have a job, I think, to try to at least feel like they've been heard and then build the relationship. However we can help build that relationship, I hope that we can be a help in that process.
Great. Well, thank you. You bet. And, you know, I didn't intend this to be one of those deals where I'm going to just present only our side, and because I haven't presented all the details that we have or showed video or anything like that. That's not appropriate in this particular instance, again, since it's an open case. But people should be heard. And I want to thank the committee for taking the time and using the forum for people to get a chance to be heard up here. Anybody else? Okay, so moving on to number 8 there. Jessica, if you could come back on, I think that's one you can probably address better than I can.
I'm gonna recommend that maybe we go to number 7.
Oh, sorry, I
Just a
passed that
crazy
by.
idea there.
So the long-range planning, again, we've talked about this. I think the last time we met, I think I mentioned this, or maybe it's time before, that we're kind of waiting for the city's mission, vision, and values project, so we can kind of coordinate that with our long-range plan. This committee was instrumental on our last long-range plan that brought us to jail and a number of other changes within the police department. And so we look forward to another long-range plan. Obviously, as you know, nowadays, with the way technology is and the way things move quickly, long-range plans probably don't go out 15, 20 years like they did in the past. I think this is realistically, it's probably more like 5 years that we'll be doing this. But what I kind of want to throw out to this group as we wait for the city's mission, vision, and values project, and obviously that's been held up because of COVID, like many things in life have. But if we have some short-term initiatives that we want to consider for the next year, maybe there's, I'll throw this out there for the committee to think about for our next meeting. If there's some short-term things you think Springfield Police Department should be focusing on in the coming year, as more of just a real short-range goal, I would very much appreciate that. I think next time we come, we can talk about what some of those may be. Does anybody have any comment about that part of it?
Consider giving people of color in this group.
Chief, if we have a, what I'd like to know is, and I know that because of this COVID thing has come up and has made things very, very difficult, but I wanted to get a just kind of an update and or where we're at with trying to get a Explorer program going. And I know we can't necessarily do that right now, but I just don't want it to die on the vine, so to speak. So is that still ready to roll type until we get some more connections going on?
Yeah, we've been actually, Jessica and I just talked about that today, and I think we've been working with the school. Jen's been really good about that, and we kind of put on hold, but I think we're getting close to getting ready to go, and we're hopeful maybe this coming year that we'll be able to pull that off. The COVID thing kind of threw a major curveball at us and got us backed up on that. We really could use that situation for our kind of long-term hiring goals.
Yeah, I think that would be in the future be a great platform to try to become become more inclusive and trying to hit some of the minority groups with get interest in them when they're young, and that allows them to hopefully come on to the police department and be some staff for us.
Yeah, I'm excited about the chance of giving this a go and see how it works. It's a little bit of a unique way to do it, but I think it will touch many more people than a typical program where you may only touch 5, 6, or 7 people for 2 or 3 years. I'm hoping to touch maybe 10 to 15 each year. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, that'd be good.
All right, I guess now, Jessica, we're ready to move on to number 8. How about that?
Sure. Yeah. As previously mentioned, we had a member resignation, and that individual housed our minority membership representation, and so that position will be open. Through the council, they had been, I think we talked about this maybe last winter or maybe even the prior fall, is that the council has been working on making some changes and some standardizations to the boards, commissions, and committees throughout the city. And I'm sure Joe can provide some additional insight and detail in that regard. But we have spoke about this in the last over the last year, and there has been some definite progress in that regard. There will be some updates to the bylaws and charges to likely formally update the number of representatives on the committee that had previously been listed as 10, that I believe the recommendation will change it to formally be 9. And that's why we had intended to staff it as 9, is because council had conveyed that ultimate intent to get that to be the number for the committee. And in addition to that, there was distinct effort to create some standardization in the appointment process. And so it's referred to as a batch selection. So all boards, committees, and commissions throughout the city will go through the appointment process at the same time. And that's to, I think, create some standardization in many areas and provide more opportunity to more individuals. And again, Councilor Pishneri can speak to that. The reason that I just want to provide the update that there is movement in that regard, as well as that would likely, that new process will likely incorporate our recent vacancy, our single recent vacancy. We'll make sure to work with, I will make sure as the liaison to work with the city manager's office to make sure that recruitment is active for this committee, as well as just follow and come up to speed with the new processes. So.
Can you actively recruit some people of color, please?
So, yeah, if anybody has any questions about that process, I'd be happy to answer them. Yeah, we're just trying to standardize it so that way we have, you know, we've looked at every single committee and commission to see if they are right sized.
Obviously,
and
the
looking at
standard
the
is
process
white.
of going to allow for better communications between the committees and commissions, and plus the council wants to look at all the applicants and do interviews, so that way we have a good cross section of the community for all the committees and commissions.
So Joe, I have a question. Our minority
yes
person is off, and I think right now it's critical that we have a minority representation on our board. So how soon will that happen? Is it going to get caught up in bureaucratic stuff, or can we do it in the next month or two?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think you know, you bring up a good point, Mike, and because, you know, obviously this is kind of important, very important. All the committees, I don't want to minimize the importance of other committees, but I understand what you're saying, and that's something that council leadership will definitely be discussing and provide staff some direction. But I can't talk on behalf of the council because I'm by myself, and it's not, you know, I can't make that decision, but it certainly can be brought up, and I will bring that up.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councilor. I just want to echo that. I think that
Sure.
Now more than ever, I just think that this committee has the opportunity to just really advocate to our council our desire to expedite both that position and their outreach to the BIPOC community to encourage participation in these processes. So I appreciate you passing that along. And the only other component that I would offer would be the consideration for potentially non-official or non-voting representation of our students. I believe that I know that it's been a priority to work on an Explorer program, and this fall may not look the way this fall has looked in past years. So the potential of offering student positions, I know that our board has seen a great value in having student representation at our board meetings. So whether it's through a boards and commission or incorporation into council process, young voices are ones that I would advocate for.
Thank you. And again, I can't speak for the council, but I can absolutely voice what you folks here have asked and mentioned. And that's really the role of this committee is an advisory board, and to communicate from citizens such as yourself to the council. And that's why I'm sitting here, so I can reiterate what you're saying. And
white citizens, right? You mean white citizens?
Well, certainly,
white.
I will certainly go ahead and do that. No problem. Consider it done.
Where are the people of color in this community? Where are they in this committee?
Yeah. You're muted, Chief, I think.
They're not.
All right.
All right. Yeah, sorry about that. Jessica, do you want to take the future meetings thing? Is that yours too?
Yes. Just that we just wanted to make sure to address that this is a unique time, and that we had to cancel a couple meetings because of the COVID situation, but with technology and people like myself learning how to manage or perform online meetings, I think that we can make sure that we can commit to meeting or going back to our previous schedule, which was we are required to meet quarterly, but we had opted to meet every other month to meet a bit more frequently, and especially at least in this time period, that seems like a at least at the minimum what we would want to go back to. So I just wanted to kind of mention that and get that understanding and commitment out there, so that as the liaison, that we can meet your requests and what your desires are for this committee.
Jessica, I was wondering if it would be advantageous at this time to meet maybe once a month until some of these concerns and questions get settled and we have more answers for people.
Yeah, I agree with that.
There you go. That's a good idea.
I would support that as well.
I also support it because it's embarrassing.
If just a moment, and as I believe previously you've asked, and this is a public meeting, but please minimize your comments and actually refrain from commenting. You are just in a listening mode at this point. Thank you. So at this point, I don't know if this requires a vote necessarily to formally go to a monthly meeting. I don't think so. I think it was just more of an agreement. I appreciate the head nod from Joe. So from just with general agreement, we'll go to a monthly meeting and we'll make sure to proceed with the virtual arrangement. I will have everything put together a little bit smoother.
Just a quick point, Jessica, as long as the committee members through consensus want to go ahead and go to the 1 month meetings, because when they signed up for it, or when some signed up for it, it was set up to be more sporadic. So we don't want to impose a new ruling on them unless they're okay with it. But we need to make sure that everybody's okay with it. And that would be good.
Okay.
We can take a quick vote if we want to.
So I think just a raise of hands would be fine. I mean,
yeah, raise the hands and
I'm good.
The agreement is okay. Anyone opposed at all? Seems like in general. Okay, great. Thank you for clarifying that. Okay.
Sorry, Chief. I know you have just one more meeting. Excitement, huh?
Yeah, right.
No problem.
Be good. All right, Jack. So I know that we did go over, and member information share was the end. Jack, would you like to maybe just see if anyone has anything to share rather than going round table? Just ask at this point, or?
Well, is there anything that, like we have done in the past, we went around the board, if there's anything to bring up or they wanted to share, fine. If there's not, we'll move along to something else.
Your white privilege
I think
is apparent.
I think it was after this, Jack, would be, if there's nobody has any comments, we go ahead and move for adjournment.
Well, if we're going to adjourn, before we do that, let's get a date set, if possible, for the next meeting.
I believe it would just fall under the first same model as the first Thursday of September. I'll be looking forward to seeing everybody.
That's fine with me.
Thanks, Jessica.
Thank you, everything. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great night.
Thank you.